Hey guys, how are we today? So last week, the weekly BX trender on Bitcoin looked like it was going to close with a higher low, a light red. However, right on that weekly close over the weekend, we got smacked back down and we closed barely lower low. Now you can clearly see in the last 3 weeks, it looks like we're making a basing pattern rather than like a capitulation pattern where the lows are getting lower but not by much. Whilst if you see the last few weeks, it was pretty much straight down. And this week, if we can get a nice move up, or even if we close around where we are now, we should be able to close a higher low on the weekly BX trender. Now, what significance does that have? Well, if we look back at the last time we closed 1, 2, 3 or more candles under the 50-week TMA and the market bias, that would have been all the way back here in the 2021 cycle, right after the top came in. You can see once we had that 3 weekly closes underneath the 50 TMA and the market bias, as soon as we got that higher low close on the weekly, we never took out that bottom before we saw a rally. So even if you entered long at say, 42.4, you would have still had a chance to get out for around a 15% profit. Whilst on the second time here, if you'd entered long at around, 38K, you've had a chance to get out at a pretty nice profit somewhere in the 40,000s. So the important thing is that low does not get taken out when this signal flashes. Now, obviously, we've only really had one of those situations because the previous cycles, Bitcoin had a lot higher volatility, and I don't really like to use lagging indicators, especially on a weekly time frame in the earlier cycles, just because of how volatile Bitcoin was. This indicator is meant to be used on stocks and commodities, things with really big market caps. So Bitcoin in the last cycle and this cycle, I guess I could count it as big enough. Like Bitcoin's as big as some of the largest stocks this cycle, so it counts. Anyways, that's pretty much it for the weekly analysis, but if we get a nice close this week, then I can say that $80,000 low will probably not get taken out until we see a retest of the market bias and the 50-week TMA from the underside, which right now would be from 101,000 to around 104,000. But I do think it is going to slope downwards considering where price action is. So anywhere from probably 99,000 to the top of this reading, which is 111,000 now. So maybe 100 to 108,000. So if you've been following, Jason Pizzino on YouTube, you probably know he loves those two numbers for potential macro lower high. And I'm not going to repeat what he says. You can go watch his video yourself. Over to the daily chart, you can see we've had some really nice buying pressure on the daily BX trender. And the stochastic RSI with divergences has played out beautifully. You can see these last two divergences resulted in a roughly 10% correction each time. So if you did, have a signal on either a daily time frame or like a 4-hour, 1-hour chart to go short, you could have made some pretty decent profits there. But what I am stalking right now is a test of the 50-day TMA, which we have not tested since 115,000. You can see here we had 2 attempts to close 3 or more candles above it. We couldn't manage that and got smacked back down hard each time. So if this time we manage to close 3 or more daily candles above the 50-day TMA, which by the time we get there, unless we see a God candle today, I'm assuming we'll test it around the end of the week, it should be in the $96,000 to $97,000 region, which if you watch Michael Pizzino on YouTube, you're going to know he's been tracking as a very important level. So yes, I'm very interested to see how price will respond at that level. The other thing I'm very interested in is the Elliott wave structure. Now, I'm potentially looking at, if we have a look at the dark blue, I'm taking this as a wave 1, which has completed. We've had our wave 2 correction. Now, I've pulled the wave counts out slightly, so I'm not, putting text over the top of each other. But you can see that, and I assume we're in a wave 3 at the moment, is what I think we're in, where we've had this A BC corrective pattern, and we're now in a 1, 2, potentially we've formed a wave 3 here, and if we do get a wave 3, as Michael likes to say, being the longest and strongest wave, this substructure wave 3 inside of this bigger wave 3 should ideally take us through the 50-day TMA, and we should retest the 50-day TMA from the overside. So something like what happened back here in the middle of September, where we break through, retest it, confirm it as support, and in this case we didn't take off straight away, but we pretty much did have a very nice move afterwards. Now if I scroll back far enough, I can probably find a much cleaner move, but I would probably bore you guys to death if I did that. So just take my word for it. If I see price action that looks somewhat like this, I would be very happy. And this wave 4, I would be expecting, if we pop over to a weekly time frame, I'd probably be expecting, you know, like a scare somewhere through here, like where we get a really strong move up, potentially a scare into a higher low. Now, obviously, the 2021 cycle was slightly more volatile than this cycle. I don't think we'll be pumping, you know, 32k to 46k, so that's nearly, you know, that's close to 50%. And then we pulled back from 46k to, you know, 34k, that's like 30%. And then we pushed up again to 48k, which is like 35-40%. I don't think we'll see that sort of volatility this time. I think if we see a strong move to, say, you know, $100,000, where we'll see, you know, up to potentially maybe 100k, substructure wave 4 retest of, say, 96k, and then we push to, say, you know, something like 105k. So, which on the weekly time frame would look pretty much very similar to what 2021 would look like. And then, you know, maybe we get a retest of, say, 100k and then a final push to 108k to make that lower high happen. And obviously, we'll be looking at the bottom of the market bias, the top of the market bias, and the 50-week TMA as potential resistance levels. And ideally, we flip that daily 50 TMA as support. Now, I hope that made sense to all of you. And I know Michael Pezzino has been stalking a slightly different Elliott Wave setup. Now, he has shared that with the TIA Premium community, so he's given you a bit of a glimpse on YouTube. So if you're not a member of TIA, you're not going to be able to see the full breakdown and how he's trading it. But I will obviously give you my breakdown of my slightly different Elliott Wave structure, and of course, only time will tell who is correct. Jumping down to the 4-hour time frame, you can see we've held this 50% level really well since our breakout, I guess, at the end of last week. And even though we have pulled back over the weekend, we've formed a pretty nice double bottom with these wicks being bought up very quickly. You can see this morning, so like, you know, late Sunday US time, because I'm in Australia, we had this pump, dump, and then pump again, which if you come down to the 1-hour time frame, you could potentially look at this range here as a Wyckoff accumulation pattern. Now, I'm not going to label the full schematic here, but you can see this nice higher low on the 1-hour time frame, followed by this crazy 11-bar up move, and the US has just started pre-market trading, which starts at 1900 hours Australian Eastern Standard Time on Monday. So potentially we could see another, you know, scare flush into a higher low, potentially at, say, 90k, 91k-ish, to flush out the weak hands and put in a bit of a swing on the 1-hour chart, because we're a bit overextended, which on the 4-hour chart, if we come back to 90k, would also be flipping this 2-bar swing top as a as support. Yeah. Another thing is the trend confluence table. You can see on the weekly time frame we're still down because obviously this week hasn't closed. The the weekly trends are still down. They'll take quite a few weeks to flip. Daily time frame, our 1 bar chart is up. But if we can see this nice strong wave 3 that I was talking about inside of this wave 3 to turn our 2 bar chart up, I think we would probably have to break around 94.3, and that would obviously increase the chance of turning the 3 bar and the weekly chart up. Because I think if we break 94.3-ish, we're very likely to retest 96.97, and hopefully we can finally flip that 50-day TMA as support this time, so we can probably see a 6-figure Bitcoin retest. Now, on the 4-hour chart, you can see the 1 bar's up, the 3 bar's up, but the 2 bar is neutral because of all the choppy price action through the middle here. And obviously, I talked about the 1-hour chart as well. On the 15-minute chart, other than showing you how crazy the volatility has been for a weekend session, how it was completely dead for, Saturday US time, and then on Sunday it's just put in these $4,000 swings. Not much more to talk about. Looking at the USDT dominance, from my last video, you can see we've pretty much done almost exactly as I thought we would. We've flipped this previous channel, the bottom of this previous channel as resistance, and we're still technically holding the top of this channel as support. However, the stochastic RSI has now had a bearish cross and has turned downwards, and if we can get some nice price action this week of people selling USDT to buy Bitcoin and other cryptos, we'll be on track to make a lower high. And hopefully that lower high leads to a couple more weeks of lower highs and then lower lows for a nice relief rally. Now, if we go all the way back to the 2021 cycle, you can see right at the end here, we had twice fake signals on USDT dominance, fake dumps, but that third time, when we got that lower high close, we actually saw a genuine couple of weeks down move. And if you've been following Jason Piscino on YouTube, you'll know that's also what he's looking at on the USDT dominance, a higher low, so lower high for Bitcoin, before we go on our massive leg up for the USDT dominance, which would correspond to a massive leg down for Bitcoin, potentially to the $70,000 or $60,000 range. Now, you can see here we've had our first fake signal, second fake signal, lower high, so hopefully this time it is the real deal. Now, I'm not going to cover altcoins in this video because I have talked for long enough. I'm not going to look at the US dollar either. I'll save that for tomorrow once the stock market has had its Monday session, so we'll actually have a little bit more to talk about. But you can see a couple of altcoins like Ethereum are testing their 50% levels from the underside, with the weekly BX trender looking like it wants to close with a higher low. And a couple of other altcoins are approaching the 50-day TMA as well, so I'm very interested to see how price this week pans out. But I will hopefully push out another video tomorrow. Thank you all for watching, and please like, comment, and subscribe. Goodbye.